for joining us tonight for our 8th and final Healthy Oceans, Healthy Minds talk. I'm Karina and I'm Projects and Events Officer at Keep Northern Ireland Beautiful.
And I'm Nicola, I'm the Community Development Officer at Keep Northern Ireland Beautiful, and me and Karina both work together in the Live Here, Love Here team.
Thanks, Nicola. So firstly, we'd like to say a massive thank you to Ocean Conservancy, who are our funders for this project. So they are an international conservation body, and we're the national coordinators for them here in Northern Ireland. So we'll stick a little bit more about them in the chat later on, so you can find out more about them. So we are delighted that you're able to join us tonight. Thank you for anyone who's tuned in for sessions before. We know that Zoom fatigue is a thing, and it's really lovely that you're able to give up your time this evening to join us, so thank you. We've been hearing from some wonderful people all immersed in nature, health, resilience, well-being, sustainability, all connected by their love of the outdoors and the impact it has on them and their mental health.
So through this campaign, we wanted to reconnect people to our seas and waterways and outdoor spaces, and to show them that what an impact that this can have and how a healthy waterway and marine environment can have on their health and well-being, and how it can create a society that values the outdoors and the many benefits that it can bring. So this is now our 8th and final session. And although we might be better than we were like in session 1, we're definitely not professionals at this. So please bear with us as we stumble our way through. And if we hope that you find this session tonight like valuable and worthwhile, and if not that, we hope you find it entertaining. So just before we begin, we've got a few Zoom rules, and it's great to see you already connected. Some of you have chosen to have videos on and some not, and also great to see the chat happening in the chat boxes. So we want to let you know that we are recording this session, but it is set up to be recorded on speaker view. So that means it'll only record the person who is speaking at that time. And but like feel free to use your chat function to tell us where you're from, connect to one another, or if you have any questions throughout the session for either Susann or Rachael, you can pop them into the chat box and then we'll field them just at the end whenever we're having a bit of an open discussion. And then we would also like, if you do want to join in the conversation as we get towards the end, that please feel free to raise your hand or let us know if you want to ask a question live, and we can go to you, get you unmuted, and you can ask the speakers as well.
Thanks, Nicola. So this week, for our final week, our talks have taken more of an educational approach. And in life, we encounter lots of forms of education, from classroom learning at home to in the community and at home as well. So this week, through our series of talks, we are going beyond the classroom, and we are learning from how these different settings can impact our mindset and how we can make an impact in the world around us. So today we're speaking to Dr. Susann Power, who is lecturer and in hospitality management at the University of Ulster. Or Ulster University, sorry, I went there, I should have got that right. And lead researcher in sustainability in tourism and environmental ethics. So welcome, Susann, and welcome, Rachael, as well. So Susann has led a number of research projects on how people use the beach, and is a published author in ethics and sustainability in tourism. So she sits on the board of directors at Sustainable NI, and she's also an avid beach cleaner herself, which I know a few of you in the audience know rightly. So Susann is joined by Rachael Singleton. She's a PhD researcher and a behavioural scientist with the NI Innovation Lab, exploring how we can address difficult situations in society. So Rachael, as I said, is also a PhD researcher at Ulster University, applying psychology and user-centred design to tackle litter behaviour on beaches. So together they're going to talk about the power of beach cleaning, which I know a lot of you are familiar with, not just as a leisure activity, but also the value the beach has, not just as an economic commodity, but also for our own well-being as well. So Rachael and Susann believe that better understanding the beach users and drivers behind their behaviour, we can stand a better chance of making a difference and real changes that can positively impact our environment, and that allows its enormous value to be protected and sustained. So welcome, Susann, welcome, Rachael, and we're really, really glad that you're able to join us tonight, and thank you so much for giving up your time. So we'll hand it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Karina, for this lovely introduction. What I'm going to do is I will share my screen with a presentation that I have. And during this time, I'm actually going to turn my video off because it can be a little bit distracting. So you'll just see a lovely picture of me next to the nice PowerPoint presentation. But then I will turn my video back on as soon as we're talking again. So bear with me for a moment while I bring up my screen. Okay, so hopefully you can all see this now. If you can, just maybe nod or let me know or something. That's great. Brilliant. So welcome to this presentation. It's been a bit of a labor of love for me. I've been working on this for quite some time, and I finally got to the stage where I feel comfortable to sort of like really go for it and present some of my research. And I've now written papers about it and I've presented at some academic conferences, but this is the first time I'm sort of presenting it in a non-academic environment. The title is Enjoying Your Beach and Cleaning It Too. And that's me, obviously, there in the picture with my litter picker. And as Karina said, I am an avid beach cleaner. So I wanted to just draw your attention on the litter problem. I mean, you're all very familiar with this. We have this year's marine litter report has found that there are 508 pieces of litter on average for every 100 meters of stretch on the beach in Northern Ireland. So it's a pretty sad picture. The UK average, according to the Marine Conservation Society, is 558 pieces of litter. And the estimates of contribution due to human activity vary from anything to 30 to 80%. So there's such a wide range depending on who you read, what authors you read. They say human activity on the beach has obviously, but it does obviously have a huge impact. And this is human recreational activity. So basically people going to the beach and having a good time. Beach visitation, along with river outflows, account for the most common sources of litter on the beach. So really the way we use our beaches is very problematic because we do actually leave an awful lot of rubbish on it. So I became interested in this, mainly through my work with Keep Northern Ireland Beautiful, but then I also became a beach cleaner myself, and I just sort of did this for a while, and I thought, this is hilarious. I'm just going to keep doing this. I love this. But I was really interested in it. And so I became interested in this sort of phenomenon of beach cleaning. And I should say I am a social scientist. I am interested in people's behavior and what, that's kind of is my thing. I'm a bit geeky about trying to understand what people do and why they do certain things. So the phenomenon of beach cleaning itself is not really particularly new. There have always been people who sort of walked along the beach and have picked up some litter as they went for a stroll. But beach cleaning as a sort of organized activity is really relatively new. And it's really come in the wake of the Blue Planet 2 TV show that this public interest in marine litter has emerged. And more groups of people started to self-organize and started meeting in order to voluntarily collect litter from the beach. And that really is what I'm interested in. So I wanted to find out what motivates this kind of behavior, but also what facilitates it and what might hinder it and how can we make the most out of it. It's also really significant as a behavior because there's real strength in numbers. So we have over 800 two-minute beach clean boards across the whole of the UK now. Last year's Great British Beach Clean in the UK had nearly 11,000 people taking part. Just below 2,000 people volunteered during Clean Coast Week in Northern Ireland. So it's really not a fringe activity anymore. It's very much, it's becoming much more, I wouldn't say mainstream, but it's not a fringe activity anymore, but it's very much still regarded as a fringe activity by many. But what it does really is it massively improves local environmental quality. And we know that last year, the 1 millionth piece of litter was collected from a beach cleaner in Northern Ireland. Nearly 11,000 kilos of litter were removed from the beaches across the whole of the UK last year. And in Clean Coast Week alone, about 900 bags of litter were collected in Northern Ireland. And just, on the one hand, you have that improving local environmental quality, but on the other hand, you also have this phenomenon that beach cleaning actually really supports well-being, and it also supports local tourism. Because this is really significant because beach cleanliness, is a key decision-making factor for choosing a beach to visit. Nobody wants to go to a littered beach. And a beach can lose up to 90%, 97% of its economic value if it's littered. And also the length of stay of tourists, so how long people visit an area, is estimated to be reduced by 60% if the beach is dirty. So 60% less length of stay. Littered beaches also decrease visitor satisfaction, but I really think this is the next is really important, that notably a littered beach leads to a 90% reduction in the quality of life perception of local residents. So beach cleaning really supports well-being and local tourism. So this is enough of the background. I want to tell you a little bit more about what I actually did. You can see lots of pictures of me, courtesy of my husband, Gavin, who's taken all of these. I got some seed funding from Ulster University a little bit. And what I did for between June 2018 and September 2019 is I went to as many beach cleans all across the whole of Northern Ireland as I possibly could. I was literally out on the beach all the time. And I watched and spoke to hundreds of beach cleaners, and I took lots of pictures, and I recorded, not like audio recorded, but I sort of took photos, and I made notes, and I wrote diaries about my experiences and what people have said, and sort of been collecting this kind of spoken data, spoken narratives of beach cleaners for about a year and a half. I still go beach cleaning, but now I just go for fun. So nothing to do with research anymore. And what I did with all these notes, I then analyzed it, and I realized that there are some common themes. So really trying to understand what is beach cleaning really all about. And I should also say, just for the purpose of being, keeping us right here, that I have actually received also ethical approval from Ulster University for this research. So this is all above board. So this was me traveling around with my litter picker all over the UK, all over Northern Ireland for a long time. And I want to share some of the findings with you, some of the things that I found out there. The first question I was really interested in is, why are people actually going beach cleaning? What motivates this kind of behavior? And initially, so you would think that, of course, it's all these environmental, people are really into the environment, it's environmental motives. And just to say, all these names here are completely fake. I've completely changed them all. So if you spot something that's your name, it's probably not you. They're all pseudonyms. So we have these environmental motives, like being very altruistic and having an interest in environmental issues. So Alan, for example, says, I'm retired now and I felt like giving something back. I was looking for something good to do. And he was talking about doing something good for the environment. And then Sinead, I was talking to, she says, I'm really into recycling and all that. So I like going to cleanups. And I think that makes sense. I mean, it's kind of expected that people have environmental motives, but there's much more to it. For example, a lot of people talked about in very sort of individualistic motivations of why they go to a beach clean. So James is talking about this sort of mental reward. He's saying that on a rainy day like this, I could stay at home or I could do this. It makes me feel good about myself. So it's nothing to do with the environment. It's just that he just says, this makes me feel good about me, who I am as a person. And then I met Pierre, who was from France, and he has just moved here. And he says, my English is not so good, but here I can practice without pressure. I can socialize and speak a little English, but also I can walk off on my own. And he felt it was a really comfortable environment where he could sort of have little conversations with people. And then, if he got too nervous about speaking English, he would just sort of shuffle off on his own and pick a bit of litter. I thought that was really quite sweet. There's like a skill development motivation there. But beside these individual motivations, there are also social motivations. So Alix was saying, I'm new to the area and this is a great way to get to know people. So it's about networking, making connections with the community. And Margaret says, I wanted to do something with like-minded people. So there's a form of what's called tribalism. It's really a sense of community, a sense of belonging amongst us beach cleaners. We belong to, we're one, we're one group, we know each other, and there's a real sense of community there. But also Roisin was saying it's great for relationship TLC. So she says, It's a great way to spend some quality time with your family and friends. So you have these very sort of social motivations. And then finally, you have what for me were very, very clearly leisure motivations. So about having a good time, having a leisure activity. And that was quite unexpected. I really hadn't thought I would come across that. So there was Peter and Mary who were from Dungannon, and they were saying, so it's a really good reason to travel to the coast, and we drive up once a month. And then they told me all about how they make a whole day out of it. They go to the pub and they go a bit of shopping, and it's a whole day out to the beach. And you know, a beach clean is just part of it. And then Robert was saying, you're outdoors and it's a great workout. So it's this sort of physical leisure, you know, physical well-being. So these were some different motivations. And just talking about this, you know, sense of belonging, in sociology, we call these so-called social worlds. And social worlds are characterized by a very high degree of informality. And I actually thought that was true in the world of beach cleaning. They're not exclusive. In fact, anyone can join in. So it's a very inclusive activity. So long as you're fairly able-bodied, you can be a beach cleaner. The only thing is, like, social worlds, in order to be successful, kind of rely on a level of regularity. So there's no obligation to participate. But I've definitely noticed that there's like a sort of a commitment, a degree of regularity, and it shows a high level of commitment. And this is not just commitment to the cause, so being committed to removing litter, but there's also a level of commitment to your group that you have. So people tend to go to the same group that they are sort of feel affiliated to, that they, you know, this is my group of beach cleaners. That's where I go to. Groups identify with each other through shared perspectives and interests. And groups, these beach cleaning groups, are really great facilitator for beach cleaning, but groups need to be much more supported, I think, in their operational challenges. And I will say more about that later. And finally, there's a lot of group cohesion, which is achieved through shared communication channels. And many of the groups that I've come across have very active social media accounts. They publish articles like the one here, you know, Leslie, you'll recognize this. But so there's a lot of really good communication within groups, but I've also noticed that the communication between groups is actually not that great. So there's an issue there, you know, and that's again something that needs to be addressed and could be better facilitated. And now just a couple of themes that I sort of came across. Place attachment plays a huge role in beach cleaning. We know that place attachment increases your willingness to participate in environmental activism. So lots of researchers have found this out, which is why slogans like "Live Here, Love Here" works really well, because it kind of taps into this, you know, place attachment. It bestows upon the beach a sort of spiritual value. You know, there's a sense of people come to the beach because they're almost consuming it through like a sense of nostalgic lens. And this is a picture of Valley Walter, which I've taken during a beach clean. And I spoke to a lady who was there, Karen, obviously not her name, but I'm calling her Karen. And Karen says, I live in Mid-Ulster now, but I used to come to this beach as a child. I haven't been back for many years, but now we travel here on some weekends and always take part in a beach clean when it's on. It brings back great memories being here and caring for the place. So I really think, you know, looking at people who might not be local residents, but people who live further away are also potential beach cleaners. You know, you don't have to live by the coast to become a beach cleaner. Another theme that really stood out to me was storytelling, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. I hadn't expected this at all. I love this. So storytelling really is a form of narrative therapy. And it's a way, what I found, of coping with the perpetuity of the litter problem. So we all know that telling stories to each other improves your mood and creates bonds. And these stories, so telling stories about the litter that you find, making up stories about what you have found, actually act as almost emotional barriers to the grim reality of all that litter that you're confronted with. So stories can create almost sort of authentic voices for beach cleaners. And I've got some pictures here. On the left, you see a picture of a bong, which we found in Strickland's Glen. And obviously, I mean, it was hilarious. The stories we came up with of how this got there and who may have used it and all of that. I mean, we had a laugh. And we collected lots and lots of litter, but it's a way of coping with the very sad situation of this litter. And then on the right side, there's a picture of a mayonnaise bottle. And there's a beach in Newrymorn and Down area where we always find mayonnaise bottles. And we always come up with all these stories of why, especially on this particular beach, there are always these mayonnaise bottles. And people come up with the funniest ideas. So this is just beach cleaning. There's a lot of storytelling going on. So Jonathan says there, sometimes people find very old items like 20-year-old crisp packets or beer cans. People like that, especially the kids, because he can tell stories about the old stuff, like where it might have come from and who might have left it there. And I think we should just write a storybook, literally just from all the stories that people come up with about the litter that they find. It would be so funny. Another theme I've sort of come across is litter hunting. Now, I have actually observed that beach cleaning is really quite competitive. People like to find the most curious item, or the oldest item, or the most plastic bottles, or there's an element of competitiveness there. I've seen people literally jump with the litter pickers, grabbing something in front of someone else, nearly grabbing it away, so and be like, oh, I have it first. There's a certain thrill of hunting for litter, and this is interesting because it kind of shows a paradox between your environmental motivation and your leisure motivation. And I've got some quotes here, and I think this one from Joan kind of says it really well. So we were out picking litter, and then I heard the beach was pretty clean, and then Joan says, I'm glad we found this. I was starting to get a bit disappointed. There was very little litter here today. It was really clean, but now I feel better that we found this hoard of bottles. So people are a bit disappointed, which is bizarre because you would want the beach to be clean, but they get a bit disappointed if it's too clean because they want to find the litter. And then I also overheard Jerry, who was there with his kids. He was saying, like, boys, come here. I think I found a drinking spot. We'll be able to pick up loads of litter. Because obviously the kids will be disappointed if they don't find anything. So I would actually say you shouldn't call it beach cleaning. You should call it litter hunting. And then this is the last theme before I am going to make some recommendations. And that's citizen science. A lot of the beach cleaning groups very carefully record the amount of bags they collect. They weigh their litter. Some of them even categorize their litter. Some people use apps to find out what what kind of litter they've picked. And I think beach cleaning is a fantastic activity that contributes to the growing domain of citizen science. And we know that in citizen science actually encourages intellectual adventure. So beach cleaning is a way something that can encourage intellectual adventure. But we also know that if you become intellectually involved with an activity, it really promotes your values. It strengthens your values. So beach cleaning can also promote environmental values. And also by recording all this, you're telling nature's tale. That's what you're essentially doing. And there's Pamela there who says, it's important that we log our successes so we can demonstrate that we are actually making an impact. So I want to finish with a few recommendations. How can we support our beach cleaners? First of all, I would say to councils, anyone who's involved in environmental planning, community planning, tourism planning, particularly, I would say, recognize that this is not just a fringe activity and it's here to stay. Promote it as a leisure activity to families and to curious visitors. Okay. Secondly, acknowledge operational challenges. You need to provide equipment and insurance and speedy collection of litter bags. I've spoken to groups who have collected litter and then the council hadn't picked it up for 5-6 days. Obviously foxes would have got in the bags, and it's just frustrating. So then you need to acknowledge and support them with these operational challenges. Improved shared communication. I think there needs to be some investment in a really good, solid online platform that allows groups to speak to each other, that allows groups to schedule their events. I know there's a calendar that you have. I'm familiar with that. I just think there is a bit of work to be done still on improving online communication platforms so that beach cleaning groups can actually communicate with one another better. So there's no clashes on which beaches, what times, etc., because there are a lot of clashes. Encourage citizen science and storytelling. I mean, these are fantastic things, make storybooks out of it, streamline and embed citizen science apps into your online platforms. These apps are being used. Why not embed them into your communication platforms and listen to the stories that beach cleaners have to tell, especially for kids? It would be so interesting, these litter stories. And finally, and for me, most importantly, we need to start giving beach cleaners a voice. I really think we need to listen to the stories. We need to ask them to present their ideas. We need to invite them to planning meetings. I have been to so many council meetings, planning meetings, tourism planning meetings, environmental planning meetings, DAERA meetings and whatever, where marine litter is discussed back to front to back. And I am yet to see one single beach cleaner being actually invited to one of those meetings, because they are the people on the ground. They are the ones who really know what's actually happening, because they are there day in, day out picking the litter. And I think it's about time that we give them a voice. And that is all I'm going to say. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'll turn my camera on again. And I think we're just going to hand over to Rachael next. And then we'll do questions at the end. Is that right? Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susie. Yeah, over to me. I'm going to do likewise. I'm going to switch off my video because if I don't distract you, I'll definitely distract myself. So I'll just put my slides up here. Good evening. I am delighted to be here. It's a really, really good opportunity to get involved with a Healthy Oceans, Healthy Minds conversation. You just heard from Susie about the importance and the benefits of being involved in beach cleaning. I'm going to talk to you about how I approach the problem of beach litter from a different but complementary angle. Now, tonight I'm wearing two hats, as Karina said. I'm here both as a behavioural scientist at the Northern Ireland Innovation Lab and as a PhD researcher at Ulster University. The Innovation Lab is a small team within government, and we work there to tackle problems that, the way we would put it, is traditional approaches, often policy or laws, find difficult to resolve. I've been there for just over 4 years now, and my role is to use learning from psychology to try to build deeper understanding of these, what we call wicked problems. And that's by better understanding what people who are involved in them are really experiencing. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, it means really looking at anything from poverty to obesity to debt, and more recently to COVID, and trying to make things better through greater understanding of the way we as human beings behave. This starts from a place that recognises that knowledge and being informed and being educated are very, very powerful things, but they're not the only answer. For example, we know why we shouldn't smoke, why we shouldn't drink more than a little bit of alcohol, why we should eat healthily. But often something happens between our intention to behave and the way we've decided and the outcome, the way of doing it. It's the difference, if you think of it as, between New Year's resolutions and, well, what happens from the 4th week of January through to the end of the year. In other words, what we actually end up doing. In my work, I try to close this gap. This is the gap between our intention and our action. The idea is that what we choose to do, what we end up doing, there are obstacles in the way sometimes. There are impediments to this progress, and we need to try to eliminate those. In order for us to carry out the sort of desirable behaviour, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's having one gin and tonic on a Friday night instead of a few more, the best way to do that, I believe, is to make the behaviour easier to do and more attractive to do. Now, my second hat is an Ulster University one, but there's a lot that's quite similar here. My own research starts with the same belief, and that's that understanding big societal issues means starting from understanding the people involved and what's driving existing behaviour. This is where I get to focus in an area that's particularly important to me. I would say vital even. And I use psychology to try to make things a wee bit better. I've been doing this for just over a year now, but I want to start a wee bit further back than this. I'd like to share with you the journey to this work. I was brought up in rural Tyrone in the 80s, where I spent a lot of my time outdoors, literally playing in the fields and walking up the lanes near my home. Now, as I'm sure a lot of you will remember, at a time where the 6 o'clock news delivered messages that were quite frightening, getting into nature was an escape. We weren't close to the coast, but every year for my birthday, a bit like the couple that Susie mentioned there from Dungannon, except this was an annual thing for us rather than a monthly thing, my father would take me to Portrush for the day. Now, I was fond of the Big Dipper and Barry's, and I was every bit as fond of the ice cream and Morelli's afterwards. But for me, those days always peaked when we headed over to the beach at Fort Stewart. The beach has been described as a liminal space, a point where worlds collide, earth, air, water, so that we find ourselves in a kind of threshold. Now, I don't think that the 10-year-old me would have thought like that, but I do remember a feeling of freedom looking along the beach and out to sea that didn't compare to anywhere else. I'm going to ask you to take a moment now, just to pause for a few seconds to think about a visit you've had to the beach. It might be a recent, very brave and very, very cold water swim that you dreaded right up until the second you put your toe in the water, but well, maybe a bit longer, but felt buzzing about all afternoon afterwards. It might be chatting with others out on one of those beach cleans Susie mentioned, even at a distance, out there with family or friends. It could be a weekend dog walk by the coast to clear your head, or even just a petrol station coffee in the car watching the waves. It might be from further back, from your own childhood, where getting first go with using the plastic rake was the biggest coup of the day. What these moments and memories you've held on to mean is highly personal. The value of the experiences is something unique to you. But I'm going to hazard a guess that none of these memories involved leaving litter on those same beaches. It's rare for anyone visiting a beach to set out planning to leave litter behind, but we all know that the proof is there on the sand, that for some visitors, this is exactly what happens. Susie has spoken about the benefits of beach cleaning, both to ourselves and to the environment. And I'm trying to understand what it is that leaves our beaches neat and cleaned in the first place, and what we can do to prevent the litter that's created by beach visitors. Some brilliant work that Susie's already mentioned is going on by volunteers, by beach operators, councils, NGOs, conservation bodies, policymakers, and many, many, many more. And I would really like to work to support that by adding behavioural science to the mix. I believe that by bringing deeper understanding of what prompts or enables someone to litter, and then tackling this in a focused way, we're better able to prevent it. So I suppose that begs the question, how exactly do I plan on doing this? Well, by focusing on two beaches in particular, Ballywalter and Torella, and starting by spending some time listening to the people who manage them, the people who take care of them, and the people who benefit from them. By working to give a voice to how people relate to and engage with the beach from their own lived experiences, I'm aiming to better understand their reality. I'm aiming to use these insights to close that intention-action gap that we looked at earlier, and in a way that's meaningful and that also lends support to the work that's already going on. For me, this starts from a place of trying to identify what it is that the beach means to the people who use it. When you think back to your own memories of beaches, this might have included feelings of nostalgia, fun, visual pictures, sounds, smells, the people you were with, and I'm sure plenty more. What I'm fairly sure it didn't conjure up was any thought of pound signs. Now, the beach has, without doubt, huge monetary value. You've heard statistics about that, but when it comes to what our beaches bring to us, money isn't the full picture. I can tell you that Northern Ireland's tourism is valued at £968 million, with 572,000 trips to the beach every single year. But I can't quantify the relief of knowing there's somewhere that's free to visit, that you and your children can spend time together away from the Xbox. I can tell you that repeated exposure to news with threatening or even at times at the moment traumatic content can increase agitation, feelings of anxiety and depression. But I can't begin to put a price on the head clearing, mood lifting walks along our beaches on even the greyest day. I can tell you that in the last year alone, people in the UK alone, spent £3.7 billion on books. But I'm not sure Yeats or Neruda or Heaney could have put a price on the inspiration that nature provided them. I can tell you that the cost of this pandemic to the mental well-being of ourselves and of those we love is still mounting. But I can't tell you the comfort that comes from feeling part of something greater by being in nature. All these benefits are at risk of being lost when our beaches aren't appealing places to visit. I'm working to make sure that littering as a way of getting rid of waste is no longer seen as an option. I believe the starting point to this is to recognise littering as a behaviour. And like any other behaviour, whether that's smoking, not paying bills, making unhealthy food choices, you name it, working out how to improve it means digging deeper into understanding why it's happening. I believe this means engaging in real and meaningful ways with the beach visitors themselves, with people like us who spend time on the beach and working with the beach. Understanding starts with learning from beach users' perspective, what for them is the value of the beach. If anybody would like to know more about my research beyond this evening, I'm on Twitter, but I will hand back to Karina and Nicola now.
Thank you so much. Thank you both. It's been really fascinating to hear about like all elements of your research. And I think you have both learned so much by immersing yourselves into the worlds of a beach cleaner and a beach user, and exploring the mindset of why people choose to get involved and do what they do to protect their coast. Like, I really loved Susann's phrase about like telling nature's tale, and it's something that we find very important. And over the past 4 weeks through these series of talks, that people have been sharing their stories, and we've heard from a lot of different people. And over the next week, the next few weeks in the lead up to Christmas, we'll be hearing more about, like, you know, what people have gained from the sessions, what they've gained from being immersed in like nature and their coast, and actually about some of the stories about people involved in some of the other work that Live Here, Love Here does. And I think we couldn't have found a better talk to end on. And like through this series, we've really been like wanting to explore what the value is to people, and what healthy oceans, healthy minds means to people. And I think like looking at what their coastline and what the inlet waterways really means to them. And I think Rachael's presentation, like, it couldn't have put it better, that the value of like our coastline it's not numerical, it's not economic, it's what it means to us in our hearts. And I think that's why like there is such a strong tribe of people who value our coast, for our coast and waterways, for leisure, for solace, for like their mental health, and also for social sides as well. So I really would love to open up to discussion to hear what people really like think as well. But before we do that, we have a signature question, and it is, what does healthy oceans, healthy minds mean to you? And I think if Susann, would you be ready to take that question first?
Sure, absolutely. Yes, healthy oceans, healthy minds. So what does it mean for me? My husband always says to me that whenever I go to the beach, my face changes. And I just never really understood what he meant. But apparently my whole facial expression changes as soon as I get to the beach. And there's something about, you know, the smell, the sound of the waves, the color blue, this, you know, the whole spectrum of senses that is stimulated by being on the beach, that probably has such a reaction in me that it actually makes me to physically change my appearance and just look much more calmer and relaxed than I would be at any other time. So I suppose that really encompasses or encapsulates for me healthy oceans, healthy minds. I am a beach lover, and it's a mindset. And I'm currently in Germany, just here for a family visit as well. And I have to say, I'm about 400 miles away from the nearest beach, and it's driving me absolutely insane. I cannot wait to get back. So for me, it is healthy oceans, healthy minds. For me, is about acknowledging that sense of peace and calm and quiet whenever I am at the beach. Really, I need it. For me, it's survival to be near the beach. Yeah.
Thank you. Susann, we'll have to send you over some pictures of our coastline.
Please do.
Rachael, and we'll pose the same question to you.
How do I follow that? That was just great. I would say that even the phrase healthy oceans, healthy minds, for me beautifully sums up the interconnectedness that I believe we have. And there's that sense of a shared space, that we are dependent, really fully dependent on the natural environment. And the more we tune into that, the healthier we'll be physically and psychologically, and the healthier that our natural environment will be as a result.
Thanks, Rachael. Thanks, Susann. I know what you said there about we need it, like physically, like we all need it. I'm reading Why Our Minds Need the Wild by Lucy Jones at the minute, and I think that's a little snippet, but it's like losing Eden. And she says, the more I read and walked and heard, the more it dawned on me, if we lose our relationship with the natural world, we may in some way be losing a part of ourselves and a profound psychic experience that we all need. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to share through this series, is that we need the outdoors and we need to protect it. And if we don't have all these volunteers like beach cleaners out protecting something that we all really, really value, that we're going to lose that part of the environment that we all really, really need. So thank you. It's been really, really lovely, and there's some really lovely comments coming through here as well. So if you guys do have any questions, we'll open it up now. And if you want to ask your question live, please just use the wee raise hand function and we'll turn your mic on for you. And if you don't want to speak, that's totally fine. Please use the chat function and we'll read it out for you, for Susann and Rachael.
Oh, I think Leslie wants to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe you could just raise your hand if you have any questions. Leslie, I'll turn your mic on now.
I'm probably coming from a weird angle, as I always often do. Sometimes a lot of the litter that's on our beach, you know, it's quite easy to sort of think it's all beachgoers, but a lot of it isn't. And it's kind of how you connect, you know, all the time. Well, not all the time, but I'm always conscious because I pick up a lot of litter. And I log it all with an app, and I have done for the last 4 years. So, you know, but I'm much more conscious. I suppose I spend a lot of my time looking at the ground. And so I see the bottle tops, you know, where someone's tossed a bottle into the road, and there's the bottle top right on the grill, ready to fall in. And we all know where that ends up, city to sea. That's what that particular organisation encompasses. And then again, you know, that a lot of the litter is actually from our whole society. You can tell when it's bin day and it's been a gale force wind, because there's stuff, you know, that's when you pick up stuff from the bins. And it's our whole society that has to change. You know, I'm all for the healthy ocean. I want an ocean where wildlife thrives and isn't put at the mercy of our pollution. So a healthy environment would be, I would probably go beyond oceans to the environment, because going up into the mountains, going walking anywhere. But the fact is, there's so many different contributory factors. Those people need to be reached. It's organizations, it's companies, and we haven't even mentioned companies, because it's not just all about litter. It's not just all about litterers. And I've sort of seen, I mean, I run a beach cleaning group, and we know that most of what we're doing is maybe trying to set examples, encourage people to discuss with us. You know, I have lots of talks and chats with different people as you're cleaning, and that's, like people have already said, it is a great thing. But it has to go sort of bigger. It almost has to go much wider. You know, it's no good if you take your kid to the football ground and the football ground's full of litter. The examples, we need consistent examples of good behaviour. Even the way some shops, their bins are overflowing, another source of litter. How many times have you sort of watched in a window a bin open? You know, so it's and schools and it needs a holistic approach, because just doing a bit. Sorry, I shall stop. Someone needs to tell me when to stop.
I will, Leslie. I will. Can I come in on that?
You can. Go ahead.
Is that okay? Yes, no, Leslie, you're absolutely right. It was interesting what you said about where the litters come from. And that's why, you know, if you look at different studies, you have those huge differences in statistics. Some of them are saying 30% of the litter on the beach can be attributed to beach visits, others going all the way up to 80%. I mean, we just don't really know. It's you know, because it's so difficult to actually trace, because you're right, you know, from city to sea, it's incredibly difficult to actually trace that. The other aspect that you mentioned was that we're obviously talking about one stakeholder in this, which is the beach user, the beach visitor who would be littering. But yes, you're absolutely right. There's a whole range of stakeholders, like producers, you know, council agencies, local government, who are all involved in this whole complex system. And you almost kind of need to develop interventions for each one of them, you know. What we're trying to do, I suppose, is and then you have different regions, you know, as you said, with the football field, the litter is there, it gets dropped in the street and then it washes through the drains onto the beach. It is a holistic societal problem. What we're trying to do, Rachael and myself, with our research is to pick an area and try to understand that better and try to make an impact on that particular area. And we're hoping that perhaps there's something that you can say, what we call the demonstration effect. And you've just actually mentioned the demonstration effect yourself. By being on the beach, by picking litter, what you are doing is you're demonstrating best practice and encouraging through conversations and through your own visibility other people to think about their own behavior and follow suit. So by doing research in that, what is actually a minute, tiny little space, what we're hoping is that it can then even snowball out into other areas. That would be tackling litter around school gates, you know, parents standing outside smoking and dropping their cigarette butts while they're waiting to pick up their kids, stuff like that. You know, if we can start with one thing, then maybe we can move on to, you know, the other aspects of littering. So I really and you know, I always love chatting with you because I love your enthusiasm and your you have that bigger picture in mind, and we need to keep that bigger picture in mind, and it always makes for really interesting conversations. We're kind of looking at it from a very small angle, and I suppose that's what we're trying to kind of help with a little bit there.
Yeah, and healthier minds is is our theme, but obviously healthy oceans, we do mean everything. Healthy oceans, just healthy minds just sounded good on a piece of paper, and of course it goes beyond that. It goes like all the work that everyone does there. I know there's some NGOs here with us tonight as well, and councils, and all that work that everybody does together. If we make that the norm, then that's what's going to change society. And there's some research we did a while back that said that people want to protect their environment, and their environment means very different things to different people. So if we can make people see that their environment is their beaches, their countryside, their street, their school gates, and they value that, then that's gonna as Susann says, snowball into everything that we do and change our mindsets, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
I think, Rachael, you wanted to say something to you?
Yeah, it was actually along the same lines, Karina. It was that idea that if we're embedding a particular change of behaviour in one environment, it doesn't necessarily mean that won't have an overspill effect and people won't participate in the same way in other environments, because beach users are people too and exist in other scenarios. So hopefully there could be I guess habit formation, which is a big part of behaviour change that isn't always looked at. And that's where it's only through that deep understanding that you can identify that. So actually, if we were able to enable somebody to rehearse that in a beach environment, then that's something that could extend beyond that world. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Leslie. Let's not keep it to our beaches by any means at all.
Yeah.
On ahead, Susie.
I think I would also add to that what Rachael and I are particularly looking at is really understanding the behaviour. And I feel sometimes that in a very well-meant way, people develop campaigns and interventions and all kinds of strategies to curb a behaviour or to promote a behaviour, but don't really understand the psychology of the behaviour itself. So you really need to understand the behavior first before you can then go on to design your interventions and encourage a different kind of behavior or promote a certain type of behavior. And that's, I think, what we're trying to do with our research, is really to kind of get to the bottom of what is that behavior. So for me, it would be beach cleaning. For Rachael, it's very much looking at littering behavior, but also at unintentional littering. So how can you, because that's a type of behavior as well, you know, so how can you understand that, you know?
I think this talk tonight is kind of like allowing us to formulate maybe plans for the future and like think about how we could collaborate in definitely with the work and the research that you are doing, and we're really excited to see how it develops, and especially with the concept of the two beaches. I think that's really great. And again, in the chat along the side, yeah, like Lindsay has mentioned about like how people seeing others out cleaning up, whether it's in the side of the road or in a street or in a park, seeing that is kind of then impacting their choices and their behaviors. And let's stop making it like a fringe activity, and let's make it the norm. So definitely. Yeah. Would we have any other questions or any comments from anyone, or anyone want to contribute? Yeah, Peter, we can turn yours on. Yep.
Yes. Hello there, everybody. The work you two are doing into the benefits to the people of litter picking and beach cleaning. As I've said in the chat, I'm associated with the inland waterways, so not beaches, except anything that gets down the inland waterways ends up in the beaches anyway, eventually. But we find that to have people out doing any sort of work along the canal exactly reflects what you were saying, Susann, about well-being and all that type of thing. Sorry, and then just to go on to the psychology of it, of actual littering. Surely we have to start at school age, very young ages. The parents obviously, or not all parents, a lot of parents are not getting the message to tell their children to stop them littering. Some of the parents themselves maybe litter, as you're saying, about the school gates. I feel that we have to get the message into the schools where the children will tell the parents that what they are doing is wrong, because it's their future. The planet is their future, and I think that's important. What do you see that the future in that? Do you think there's much hope of getting the schools to push it more?
Well, which is why I think that beach cleaning really is such a great activity for families and children. And I would like to see it much more promoted as a family activity, and encourage families on their Sunday day out or Saturday day out to the beach, to say, rather than just sort of playing ball on the beach or going in the water, here's something that you could do. But that takes a bit of commitment from the people who are in charge of tourism planning. So my background is in tourism, and I would always look at things from a tourism angle, because I think that there's a real opportunity here. It's obviously an activity, beach cleaning, that is, it's a normative activity. It trains you, it builds norms, it builds character. But what it also does, it's great fun, and kids love it. And through that, if you can associate something, learning about the environment, if you can associate that with fun, then why not do it? Why not promote it more? And I would love to see a tourism planner from a local council really say, well, we have all these beaches here, of course, with Coast and Glens, so why don't we actually invest in this and make this part of our tourism product? As for schools, again, it's, yeah, I mean, obviously we do. I know that, Keep the Land Beautiful, you work with eco schools, and many of the eco schools, they do beach cleanups. They go out and they pick litter, and they teach the children. And I've listened to, because I'm also an eco school assessor, I've listened to kids tell me how they tell their parents off about littering and stuff like that. But I think we need to mix that. There's, yes, doing something good for the environment, but also it's a fun activity. And we need to drive that message home, that this is in order to get the younger generation really involved in it. That's how I would see it, promote it as a fun leisure activity to do.
I would agree that we've actually seen an increase in families applying to our Adopt a Spot program since COVID really took over. And I think that is people wanting that kind of positive family activity, and it's something that we're hopeful that we can support again into the future. And I think you're right, there is quite an emphasis on the education about litter in the formal education setting, But as me and Karina like mentioned like at our introduction, it's that kind of like informal learning as well. So there are many youth clubs, like, you know, like youth organizations, scouts, guides, who do carry out like, you know, a litter pick or kind of positive community activity as well. And there's a lot, I think there's a lot to be benefited from that. So hopefully, again, that's something we can continue to engage with. Yeah, pass it over to Rachael. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you, Peter, that sense of embedding this in this awareness and this culture in the younger generation, particularly because I think that they're really, really environmentally conscious as it is. And if we can build on that, that's fantastic. I think that children can be great levers for change in parents. I would also say that understanding why people litter, I think that the knowledge aspect, yes, it is part of it. But I'm not sure how many people, if we were to sit them down, aren't already aware that it's not okay to throw litter on a beach. What I would suggest is that when we delve a bit deeper, we might find that it's not okay unless it's an orange peel. It's not okay unless I'm with a group of other young ones and, you know, they threw theirs and I don't want to be the one who doesn't do that. Or it's not okay, but sure, it's a cigarette butt. I think that there's a lot of stuff that happens outside of those assumed norms that we need to look a wee bit closer at. And that way we can maybe identify what those little areas that are deemed to be acceptable littering or not the worst. And maybe look at those. And I think as well, looking at those motivations for behaving in particular ways. So for example, well, if I do that and nobody sees, how do I feel about that? Is there a sense of, we would call it automatic motivation, that sense of feeling guilty, and that would be a preventative step. I know, for example, that in particular areas where there's drug abuse, they've positioned posters with just a set of eyes, just a photograph of people's eyes above them to try to disincentivize and to prevent drug abuse. And bizarrely, even that is a deterrent because there's a sense of being watched. And I mean, we can all say it's only a poster, but it works. And there are some really clever tools. I mean, I noticed outside a car park there recently that it was my son pointed this out. He's quite tuned into this. Again, quite an environmentalist at 14, but he pointed out a litter bin and there was a target inside it, like a bullseye. And he said, oh, isn't that great? I mean, that makes a game out of it. And you think, yeah, that's good. It's saying, yes, we can inform people till the cows come home. And for some people, that's all that's needed. But for others, actually, more is required. And sadly, that may always be the case. So how do we better facilitate that behaviour that we want to happen? And how do we disincentivize the alternatives? And I think that does take really getting to the core of what's going on in the first place.
Exactly, it's what you saying there, and Susann was saying about play, like incorporating play, and if we make it a fun activity, like that's going to engage so many more people, and especially the young people as well. Does anybody have any more questions or comments? Peter, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and just interesting about the incentivizing people. I remember when the Litter Acts first came in, I'm that old. And I think it was a fine, possibly as much as £10, which would be equivalent of at least £100 today, maybe 200. And there were people enforcing that. I wasn't living in Northern Ireland at the time; I was living in Scotland. But there were enforcement officers all across, certainly Scotland, and I saw it on television in England. What is the attitude to that sort of incentivizing?
Well, that kind of restriction. I personally haven't done enough research into this area to say whether I think it would be successful or not, but I would agree with you. My background is in environmental policy, Peter, so I can't begin to say that I disagree with the use of legislation. I think it's a very good place for it. And I think that when it's there, it would be helpful if it's used. Otherwise, it's not worth the paper it's written on. But I do think that you can use that in tandem with other methods. So I wouldn't say for exclude legislation or bylaws or anything like that. Go on ahead, Susie.
What we do know, though, from research is that environmental messaging isn't so direct environmental messaging isn't really that effective, because it kind of only targets the people who are actually already listening to it. So there's some really interesting research, and it is around user-centered design, which actually is also Rachael's research approach. And you hadn't talked about this, but that's okay. Is that if you almost package the environment, the pro-environmental message, into something like what Karina said, play or convenience or self-esteem or reward or recognition or something like that, you're likely to be more effective in producing or stimulating the sort of behaviors that you want than having these sort of direct targeted environmental messages. And I think this is what Rachael is particularly looking at of her research and designing an intervention to see if we can stop people from littering. So we'll see. Well, I think we should have that research. We should have that seminar again in what, about a year and a half time, Rachael, or 2 years? 2 years time. When 2 years time, when you finish your PhD, we'll come back and report back.
Yeah, I think a good example of what you're describing there, Susie, is anti-smoking campaigns, and those that were particularly aimed at teenage girls. And what they discovered was that obviously it was illegal to buy cigarettes and to smoke. Is it under 16? I don't know anymore. It's a long time since I was that age. But the marketing was very much focused on the mortality aspects, the damage to your organs, and what they realized was it wasn't working, because at 15, really you feel immortal, and actually what matters more is what your skin looks like. So what they found to be more successful was letting these girls know that, and I'm sure there were some boys also, that it damages your skin, and you might not look so nice if you keep smoking. So yeah, similarly, there's a user-centered design aspect to that, and I would say that I believe that there is a case for legislation, and I would firmly agree with Susie with regard to the pro-environmental messaging tending only to land with those who have pro-environmental ears. However, if we make any action easier than the alternative, if we make it more attractive than the alternative, if we make it salient, and in that way it applies to us or is something novel or interesting, and finally if we make it timely, and that's an acronym for EAST, which is a behavioural lens through which we design behaviour change interventions. So if we intercede at a point that's timely, for example, the poster is outside the newsagents where girls generally buy their cigarettes, that's a timely intervention. All of those things we use together to create behaviour change interventions that are more likely to have success. It's going off piste a wee bit.
Yeah, we're going. I know you need to tell us.
That's what we do.
I could listen to us all evening, so I could. Okay, I'll pass back to Leslie. And if anyone does have any other questions, if you want to just maybe make a wee note in the comments, and then we'll know to come to you after.
I mean, there are other interventions that could make things better for us. And I mean, if I include something like the deposit return system, I mean, the trouble is that litter has no value. Cans, bottles, things discarded, they've got no value. If people see those as having no value, then it's almost like, to my mind, feeding a circle. They definitely work. I mean, we're going to get one. The question is why we're waiting so long. And people have been going on about trying to deal with human behavior. The problem with littering, it's to do with people. But I'm very much of the thing that it's a mixture of different things all working against each other. And I mean, one thing you've got to start calling into account how the companies and our culture of food and drink on the go, because whether you like it or not, there will probably always be a group of people that will litter, but there's quite a large group, I understand, in the middle that can be worked on, and subtle changes can really impact on their behaviour. So I only say this because I spend a lot of time on a group called the UK Litter Picking Group, and sort of cleaning has become almost a job for people, and it's just not solving the problem. It's some areas may be improved, but from what I see, it's just continually getting worse. So companies have to be brought into this equation, because if I walk into McDonald's, and I have done, to see what kind of information they provide to their customers, because we all know McDonald's is a heavily littered brand, there's really nothing. They have a little thing where if you eat inside the restaurant, which of course you can't do at the moment, they tell you where, which 2 places to put your waste. But what other messaging? Because I don't see it. I just do not see it in action. And I think companies need to start taking more responsibility to try and educate their customers. That's me. I could go on for hours about this, but it's just another thing that it's not just the litterers, but it's probably taking away from the sort of positive psychology aspect of the talk tonight. So
you're right. It's not just the litterers at all. I'm just hoping that as we speak, somewhere in some part of Europe or further afield, somebody else who's doing a research PhD is talking about the work they're doing with industry, and that together our work can be complementary, because anything to do with the natural environment takes not only a 2-pronged, a multi-pronged approach. And I think it cannot be solved by only looking at people who are littering. You're absolutely right. But I do think it's done in small steps, and I'm starting small, but I'm hoping the impact ripples outward.
But also on that, and I think Lindsay's, you've also commented on it in the chat there. We know, we just know, Leslie, from research that visible anti-littering messaging just isn't really working. We know that you are, as Rachael what did you say, Rachael? It was beautiful the way it says, environmental messages, you're tapping, you're speaking to people who already have environmental ears. So what we're looking at is, what are other ways of changing people's behavior that doesn't require this sort of direct environmental messaging, because the research has shown us that it's not very effective. So we're looking at other alternative ways. And yes, you are right, absolutely. And Rachael's already said there are so many other people involved in this. There's the industry involved in this and all of that. It's just not, it's too much for us as a research team to do. We're looking at this particular aspect, and I do also hope, and I know that there are other people looking at the circular economy and at waste reduction and at degrowth business models, sustainable business models, and all of that. So it'd be interesting to get those in for another evening, some other time.
I know. Thank you guys so much. And Leslie, don't apologize for bringing these topics up, because these are topics that we need to discuss, and we need to be more open about it. And the more that we talk about it, the more that we're going to make good decisions and change behaviors. So, and these are topics that we need to talk about. We are very aware that it's 8:20. So thank you very much for everybody that has stayed on with us. Caroline has asked in the question in the comments here, we're just wondering if COVID has changed any of the attitudes and behaviours. We've certainly found that, I don't know, maybe are we more aware, but we've certainly found since COVID, we've had, as Nicola says, a lot more families applying to adopt a spot, and a lot more groups generally, and that's maybe because we've been promoting it more. I'm not sure, but we are very aware of an increase in people wanting to get out there and do litter picks. But obviously at the minute we are finding it difficult to put out the right messaging about what we can and can't do. Is there anything around, have you guys found anything about the behaviours? Has COVID changed that?
Well, I suppose what I've observed is, like, in the tourism hospitality industry in particular, we've gone back to using much more single-use plastic again. So there's been so much really good work happening over the last few years, 2 years or so, on tackling single-use plastic, like with your own project that you're running at Keep Northern Ireland Beautiful, but other work as well. And many companies have moved away from single-use plastics, and unfortunately, because of COVID and all the health and safety restrictions, we have noticed again a shift towards using much more disposable cutlery, disposable cups, and all of that stuff. So that's been a step back actually in terms of the sort of waste generation. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I can't really comment. Maybe Leslie knows about more litter on the beaches, or...
I was just, am I allowed to speak? Sorry.
Yeah, of course.
No, I was going to say about adopt a spot. I mean, one of the things that we've always thought about being a beach cleaner is in a way everybody wants everything to be cleaned at the same time, and you can't do that. So a beach cleaning group usually sort of focuses on area, and there's a limit to how many beaches you can clean. So for me, adopt a spot is a great thing to be able to promote to the group, because as you say, families are it's quite common to see families adopt the spot. And it's another way of trying to tackle, the sheer mileage of coastline, because almost everywhere needs something doing it. And we just can't stretch that. We just can't run enough sessions. And I'd agree with Susie totally on the single-use plastic. It's kind of one of the things that just when the lockdown ended, it was just like crazy. The world went crazy, and I still don't think obviously it hasn't recovered, but I think it may do long-term damage to people's thinking. How can I put that across? I'm not putting it across very well. Because people are living in such a negative environment at the moment, as you say, the television, doom, 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 it's quite hard to be positive. So if you want to engage people with litter or talk about it, it feels like a very negative subject. And so there's a danger that you pull back, because all these are issues that really need discussing. We can't keep sort of pushing them down the road. But how do you deal with that? Does that make sense? Does that make sense?
Well, I suppose the Healthy Oceans, Healthy Minds 1 month campaign, 4 week, is a really good way of starting to talk about all of it again. So it's a very positive campaign. So thank you, Karina and Nicola. It's been really, really great.
Oh, thank you very much. I think going back to maybe what Leslie kind of talked about with Adopt a Spot, and it's great to see actually, good positive support from it, through the comments as well. We have got we've got an app in development with Adopt a Spot, and with the app there's going to be an interactive map, so that's going to show to users the different areas across all of Northern Ireland that have been adopted. And there should be an easier functionality about how you can arrange your cleanups, and then from the cleanups there should be then an easier way of showing the people out there and the other users about when the cleanups are going to take place. So that app is in development. We do hope that it launches soon. It's technology. We hate working with technology, but it's getting there, so it is. And I think that whole interactive map will help to kind of see the network, and hopefully me and Karina do also have thoughts and we've got these ideas of maybe creating Facebook groups for Adopt a Spot groups to kind of keep that connected community. I've really enjoyed tonight just having an evening talking to all you guys, really like-minded individuals. But again, it goes back to the message. We are the people that care. We are the people that like value the environment, and we need to reach those hard to reach, but we'll get there. We will. And so yeah, like hopefully maybe in the future we can have more sessions like this. And I think there was another question come in? Yeah, there have, Caroline has just asked in the questions, there were some surveys that suggested more of a local focus and growing awareness of our local areas and green spaces. I'm wondering if this translated into less littering and more pride in our local areas, even more time to notice environmental degradation. There's been a lot of like really good research about again, it's the value of the green and blue spaces. There was a study done by Derry City Council, and it's quite an interesting one. And again, it's kind of where we wanted to, like, that's why we're doing this, is like about having the value of those places and then wanting to make them, like, improve them. Yeah. If there's no more questions, or if anyone has any further comments, again, we're fast approaching 8:30. No. Okay, I think me and Karina will just maybe take this opportunity just to say thank you to everybody for joining us, and thank you for being so open and like for joining in the discussions. We really hope that you enjoyed this evening, and again, tonight marks the last one of our talks. We have really loved this programme, and we've really loved connecting with so many like-minded individuals and speakers and participants. And next week we'll be beginning to run our series of like storytelling, and we hope that, like, you know, if you do want to get involved in that, please contact us, tell us your stories, and we're going to have information in our social media pages, and we really would love to hear about like what healthy oceans, healthy minds, healthy streets, healthy waterways, healthy environments really does mean to you. So thank you so much everybody for being involved.
Thank you. Thanks for organising it. It was brilliant.
Thank you.